today we are going to show you the true meaning of holiness in the ancient Hebrew language, the Əʋe language, where the Bible makes more sense and your eyes will open to the glory of God. So, what proof do we have to claim that the Əʋe or the ancient language was indeed what it is as we're claiming it? What proof do we have that the Əʋe was indeed the ancient Hebrew? And to answer that question, in addition to historical and cultural evidences, which you may verify for yourself, do your own research on that. Despite the historical and cultural evidences in the Əʋe culture, God confirming to me twice so far in dreams, in visions, which is our third credential to prove it that the Əʋe we're speaking of, or that we speak, is the ancient Hebrew. And the fourth evidence is the ultimate, which is what? Matching it with the Bible, in the context of the Bible. All right. So in the night of 5/18/18, I learned three things about the nature of our ancient Hebrew language, of our Hebrew language. Excuse me. The first thing that God taught me in the night of 5/18/18 was God confirmed it to me that the Əʋe was indeed the ancient Hebrew. My mother language was indeed the ancient Hebrew, is what God told me in the vision. And the second thing that God taught me in the night of 5/18 was that the ancient Hebrew, the Əʋe, back in the days, was not structured. And that is why the ancient Hebrew alphabet has different interpretations and is said to not contain vowels. All right, so it confirms the vision, or what God told me, that the language was not structured in the beginning. And as a matter of fact, let me show you the following from www.shemayisrael.net. So this is another chart of the ancient Hebrew language which I was studying, and this is what the note says at the bottom of the chart. Quote: Gematria is in a very simple sense is the study of the various numerical values of the Hebrew letters and words. Since there is no separate numerical system in the Hebrew language, all Hebrew letters have a numerical value, so it is a very legitimate and valuable form of study. And we read on. It says, there are many different forms of gematria. Okay, the gematria system used in this chart is a mispar, also known as normative value. And we read on. Okay, the paleo font used in paleo erythology, which is look at it, is an attempt, all right, to blend the ancient variants into a uniform and recognizable font set that accurately depicts the original meaning of each character. And we read on, okay? It should be noted that this is not a historical ancient Hebrew font and a font set, but simply an artist's rendition of the ideal font. The ancient font used in Third Paleo font, and it is an accumulation of some of the oldest renderings of the ancient Hebrew found through archaeology. It should be noted that there is no known original font set, so the fonts used are attempts to show the original forms and meanings. Alright, so that's what the scholars are telling you. That's what they're saying. There is no, everything they have here to try to show you the ancient Hebrew or even the modern Hebrew was attempts. Alright, they cannot prove nothing. So what we have today is simply a reconstruction of what has been. So there is no that's why in some of the interpretations of the Hebrew letters, uh, each scholar has his or her interpretation of what one letter could mean. So each letter has different meanings. So that's what God told me in a vision on 5/18, that the language, the Əʋe, in the beginning was not structured. Okay. And the third thing that God told me in the night of 5/18 was that other neighboring languages and dialects began to mix with the language, with the ancient Hebrew, as is the case of any other language, in our modern society. Many English words, for example, are foreign, though most people don't even realize it. We say things like voilà or déjà vu. Those are French words that are borrowed, okay, into the English language. So the same thing happened with the ancient Hebrew, with the Əʋe language. It began to borrow from the neighbors dialects or languages, and more predominantly because the people of God have gone into exile, multiple times. So the language we have today, called the modern Hebrew, is an attempt to reconstruct what has been. So it's not a critic, but something you need to bear in mind. And speaking of which, as a matter of fact, from online sources, as an example, this is from an article from wikipedia.com. We read that the revival of the Hebrew language took place in Europe and Israel towards the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, which is very recent, very recently, through which the languages usage changed from the sacred language of Judaism to a spoken and written language used for daily life in Israel. All right, so that's another proof that, as God told me in my vision, the Hebrew that our father spoke back in the days is not quite similar to what is currently spoken in Israel. So which is the next thing that God told me about in a separate vision on 5/19. And he made it known to me that the modern Hebrew, which is currently spoken in Israel, is not the language of the language that our ancestors spoke years ago. You know, again, it's not a criticism, but it is something that you need to to be reminded of, something that you need to be aware of. So I do know for a fact that excuse me, my mother language, my Əʋe, is and was indeed the ancient Hebrew. All right, and how to prove that is and to make sure that it has not changed or it is the same, uh, is what I'm doing right now. It is a lot of work, to put out videos like these ones. Excuse me. And how to prove it is to go to the scriptures, to the Bible, and to match the words in their context. And in addition to that, I have dictionaries. Okay, very ancient dictionaries. One is dated back to 1907. It's a German Əʋe Dictionary. So it's a lot of work and a lot of studies to bring you things like this. So it is our desire to teach you the Əʋe language, the ancient Hebrew language, so you may have a better understanding of the Word of God. And speaking of which, holiness is what we want to look at today. Holiness, it's the Bible word that we want to look at today in the ancient Hebrew, in the Əʋe language. And since the Bible was translated from the ancient Hebrew language, this is the word that was translated as holy in Əʋe. Okay, holy in the ancient Hebrew is kokwe. And if you look at it closely, the root word is repeated twice, ko. And again, not to be critical, but we want to show you what they have suggested the meaning of the word to be versus what it really is. All right, so this is what we have been taught that is the meaning of holy. Okay, quote, dedicated or consecrated to God, or a religious purpose, sacred. Okay, and it goes on and on. But let's look at it in the Əʋe, in the ancient Hebrew language. So the word is kokwe, means it has the root word is repeated twice, ko. It means what? In Əʋe, it means washed, clean or washed. It is repeated again, washed, clean or washed. And the a is a suffix added to it to form the adjective kokwe. And please notice that the root word is repeated twice. Wherefore, we can safely infer from a biblical standpoint that holiness means physically clean and spiritually washed. So the true meaning of holy in the Əʋe is physically clean and spiritually washed. And if you say, nope, to be physically clean don't matter, like most people say, then your life is going to be unpleasant because you're going to catch sickness and will create more problems for yourself than is necessary. All right. All your children shall be taught by the Lord is what we read in Isaiah 54 verse 13. And it is what the prophecy says, that God in our days is going to teach us the truth. So at the time, God began to teach us in our dreams and visions how to live our lives His way by avoiding sin. He also taught us hygiene, which we have been doing our very best with to maintain to this day. In fact, we have improved our living condition in building from the areas that God showed us that needed improvement. So, to be holy means to be physically clean and spiritually washed. Bearing in mind that our body, our physical body, is the temple of God, wherefore must be maintained clean. It is also noteworthy that in Leviticus 13:45, God requires of the leper to cry out, unclean, twice, both physically and spiritually. For example, Miriam, Moses' sister, sinned against God, right, and became leprous. Leviticus 13:45, quote, and the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. And that's what all those physical rituals of washing are all about. It's about hygiene. Even though the emphasis is on the spiritual aspect of it, the physical one is no less important. It is something you have to learn to do in order to have good health. You gotta practice being physically clean. And when the Bible speaks of holy garments, it is talking about a garment that has been washed. Okay, Leviticus 8:6. And Moses brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. Okay. Similarly, Exodus 19:10 and 11. Quote, and the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai, unquote. So God requested that the people of Israel washed themselves, presented themselves before God, washed, clean, physically. And we read it again in Deuteronomy 23 verse 13 and 14, quote, and thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be when thou wilt ease thyself around abroad. Meaning, see, the context is about when you party, when you go number two, you need to hide it, okay? Because, okay, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. All right, when you go number two, God says what? Make sure it is not exposed. For the Lord thy God walketh in the midst of thy camp to deliver thee and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy. Thy camp shall be clean physically, well maintained, that he see no unclean, no filth, no trash thing in thee, and turn away from thee. All right, trash. It turns us off. It turns us away from people. Okay, we ourselves desire to be in clean places. It is God's approach that we have a clean environment, a clean body. That is the first aspect of holiness. As Yahweh began to teach his people in Exodus 31 verse 13, he says, quote, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. And by that he means I am the Lord who teaches you to be clean and to practice hygiene. Like I previously said, it is God's approach to keep his people healthy physically, then spiritually. And it is the spiritual aspect of holiness that we're going to look at next. Germs and microbes are compared to sin. Germs make us sick physically, and sin makes us sick spiritually. As a matter of fact, in describing the rebellion of his people, God says in Isaiah 1 5 and 6, quote, "Why should ye be stricken any more? Ye will revolt more and more. The whole head is what? Is sick, and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even unto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment." All right. So God compares sin to sickness, spiritual sickness. Sin makes us dirty spiritually. So when we turn back to God to let go of our sinful behaviors, He washes us clean spiritually. It is God, it is the work of God to wash us clean. It is not given to a human being to make himself clean by doing such or such. And 1 Corinthians 6:11 states, quote, "And such were some of you, but ye are washed." See that? Washed. "But ye are sanctified." And when we speak of sanctification, we're talking about washing. Okay, look at the context. It's a comma. It explains it. "And ye are justified." And justification comes by the spiritual washing. And sanctification comes also by practicing life that is free of sin, learning to do things God's way. "But ye are justified in the name of the Lord Jesus and by the Spirit of our God." So unless one is washed spiritually, unless one has been made clean spiritually, he or she will not be able to dwell in the presence of God. That's why we read in Revelation, John saw the multitude before God, and it says what? Revelation 7 verse 14, "I answered, Sir, you know." And he said, quote, "These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb." Only Jesus, the Lord, has that authority to wash you clean. So you have you have got to ask Him to do it for you. And in conclusion, to be holy is to be physically hygienic and spiritually washed, cleaned inside out. And thanks for watching. My name is Joshua from Chosen Vessels channel, the Preacher's channel. And feel free to send us an email to 7is3.com. I'll put it in the description box of this video, so you may let us know if you wish and desire to learn the Əʋe. We will be glad to get together and make it happen. All right. Blessings, and until next time.